And, here too, I mean, this is, again, smoke and mirrors, that we weren't by the sea at all. But, again, I think the sea work, the water work is very convincing. I mean, they were just stood up against green screens. I mean, I hate to demystify the whole thing, but I think it's interesting. I think to know how it was done doesn't necessarily mean it's not fun to watch it.
Right.
You always worry how much you should tell people about what goes on, but I think people like inside stuff, don't they?
Oh, sure they do. It's sort of the magic of movie making. Although I have to say, I had a little child ask me the other day how we found a lion that could talk.
Well, you said with great difficulty.
Right, exactly. You have no idea how much he cost.
So I remember when we showed this scene to the studio the first time, Tom Rothman, who was running Fox, he said, it's got to be more sinister, the thing. You just thought, well, how do you make it more sinister? So apart from the visual elements, each island has its own sound element. So what we came up with, what Nigel Stone and Jimmy Boyle, who are the sound designers, was this kind of volcanic hissing and thumping going on all the time, which is a kind of constant. And I think it adds a sort of a threat. So I think in all the islands, they each have, and it would be fun to just play the scenes and try and figure it out, they each have their own sound uniqueness, their own identity. And it was this, because you don't want to just do it all with music all the time or have sinister music, because then it gets too heavy. So it's a question of taking the natural world in which this is set, which is a volcanic world, and to add a whole dimension of volcanic sounds to it.
Well, this has the grunts coming from underground. It almost feels as though the island itself is breathing.
Yeah. And when we're going to see in a moment what comes out of the thing, it sort of makes perfect sense. But, it was just an interesting challenge because they go to so many islands that the islands should all be different in some way. And, again, this was an opportunity to do it with sound as much as anything else.
Oh, no.
So, we now are about to witness our new character, our dragon.
That's right. Who we find out very quickly is not a new character at all.
Yes, he's an old friend. And, this, I think, took some time, just the design of this. I was on the film for over 2 years before we started shooting it. And, a lot of time was spent with concept artists who would, gifted artists who would just draw you tons and tons of different versions of everything, different versions of dragons and whatever. And, the interesting thing with this, the key to this was what elements of Will Poulter can we put into the dragon? Obviously we put his eyes in, we put his eyebrows in, but I think this went through quite a lot of changes, this dragon, before we ended up. We didn't want him to be too dangerous. We didn't want him to be too reptilian. I remember he went through a phase when he got very, very black and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a cardiac arrest, and but everybody was very helpful, and we pulled back from that to give him this sort of more golden glow, so he wasn't just completely sinister. Particularly when, as shortly when, you'll find out who he is.
And it really, he does seem to have his own semi-recognizable features, and so it doesn't come as a total surprise when we find out who the dragon has come from.
So, I remember we had to shoot this. We set up the boat at a place called Cleveland Point, which was a car park right by the ocean. And there on that car park, we built this huge gimbal with the whole boat. The boat, I think, weighed 100 tons. And we had this boat, and then, this scene, we had Lucy and everybody, on the boat and looking out to sea or not looking out to sea, seeing the dragon come in, and before that, the dragon attacking the boat. It was very, very tricky for everybody because there was nothing to look at. We just had to, say to them, look here, and we couldn't even tell them what they were looking at. But it worked very well because although we weren't at sea, I had about 100 degrees of sea horizon, so you could look around and there was one of the reasons we went to Queensland was because the sea was calm and manageable. It was by the Great Barrier Reef, so the power of the sea was being diminished by the time it hit us. So it wasn't, we weren't subject to huge waves and stuff like that. But I think that worked well to that particular location, and because we were struggling, weren't we? We were struggling to find where do we put the boat.
That's exactly right.
We spent some time in Mexico. We had a big tank there, the tank they used for the Titanic and for Master and Commander. And we were in Malta for a bit, where they'd done a lot of work. And
even in Alicante, Spain, we looked at a studio there, and they were going to build a tank overlooking the Mediterranean.
Yeah. But then we got this idea that we wouldn't put the boat in water, and we would just put the boat by water.
We found that the Australian, this stage here in Queensland was available. The stages, the Warner stages, and they had the height requirements that we needed for this film, and some of the locations. And it was the Australian government had really gone out of its way to encourage filmmaking there. I have to say, at the time, the U.S. dollar to the Australian dollar rate was in our favor, which hasn't always been the case since. But it was just the ideal place to make the film, and having made this film there, I really don't know where else we could have done it.
I think this is a kind of favourite little area of the film. Also, something we should talk about more, but is the debt we owe Dante Spinotti, who photographed the film. We shot this stuff outside on the beach at night, so that was always stressful, and during twilight as well. And, I think these are good little scenes, and you have to shoot very, very quickly. I remember we had like 5 cameras out there. We had all these little scenes to do, this one, the one with the 2 boys, and then we had to do the one with the dragon and the mouse, more of which later. But, I just remember it was kind of panic central. You'd have to say, ready, do it again.
Right.
Had all these cameras pointed out, right, let's move on. And poor Gail there, she was bewildered by what was going on. But you have so little twilight, and night is a premium tide especially to have children working. You can't keep them out much after 10. So,
and if you remember, it was very cold that night.
Very cold. So this scene, of course, which is totally computer generated, but it was kind of funny for us to shoot it because we had to shoot all the backgrounds. So we had Angus and his team playing all the parts, playing the dragon and playing the mouse and doing all the moves. Then they would clear out and we would photograph those moves with nothing in it, just empty frames of film, but with little camera moves in it. And then, gradually this whole thing was put together. But I think, again, going back to the idea that what's central to this film is this relationship between these 2 characters. This is a very emotional scene, and now we can see that Reepicheep has really been won over by Eustace, and it really is the most sympathetic to him, that you feel their tough ride at the beginning of the film when they didn't get on at all is beginning now to pay off, and you're getting the sense as a real closeness. But just the detail of all this. I love this little eye look he does at the end of the dragon. I thought, what? You a pirate? And again, this scene here was shot at twilight, so you get that nice sort of very grey, dawny look as well. But again, this was panic-stricken as well. And of course, goes without saying, there's nothing much to look at, just a big green wall there. So the star and the boat and everything else all had to be dealt with.
In this shot, for instance, here with the dragon and Reepicheep, is really just a plate, an empty plate, because neither the dragon nor the mouse is actually in it.
But again, here's where, as I said, where this boat was really actually by the sea, not in the sea. But then you have this great view of empty ocean. So that was one of the benefits of being outside and being near the sea.
And now here we have in effect, the payoff of the naiads who Lucy had met at the beginning of the film, and now she's being warned not to go further. And so hopefully, it just adds an element of fear or of danger to the voyage and to the audience.
And again, there's the old Minotaurs doing their stuff.
Now, it's interesting also with the boat that we built, as specific as it was and as detailed. We did not go all the way up on the mast, and we never actually had any sails. We added those in post-production.
Yeah, we had a sort of a piece of a sail, but not the whole sail. So this is again is a lovely moment of the film. It just speaks actually. You know, there are a lot of people worked on the film, on the script. A lot of people worked on it without credit. And I remember one of them, you know, had this kind of, I thought, iconic idea of having the dragon pull the boat. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a difficult film to write. It was a difficult book, and to kind of get the right amount of fantasy in it. But you know, a lot of people contribute to this. But I think this is one of my favourite moments. How pleased old Eustace the dragon is, and just this idea of him yanking this boat along.
And here we have Eustace, even though he's still a dragon, really transforming himself and being a partner to everyone.
And I remember reading that scene and thinking, how are we going to do that? And now, you know, we did it. I mean, it's just kind of gratifying when, you know, you read just the simple line, dragon pulls boat across, and there's no boat, no dragon, no water, no nothing. You know? And there it is. So here's another. Now this one never existed, this island. This was really created out of the imagination and out of reference material. We did a lot of research on islands and on various topographies from all over the world. We had scouts out looking for stuff and roomfuls of photographs. And so, you know, we took these things, and Barry Roberson, the production designer, and his team would take these pictures and would work on them, and out of these pictures create what I wanted here, which was something that was sort of mountainous, something with a lot of water to it, something that was imposing but not too threatening.
And here we are now, and all of this is on a soundstage.
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable, both from Barry's design. I mean, just look at, you know, when you see shots of the trees, just what he's so good at is just the detail, the finish on the walls in the dungeon, the finish on these trees, on these twigs, the kind of the moss on it, just the incredible detail, which, you know, I think is the great skill of design. And of course, this is miraculously photographed by Dante. This was, you know, for him to create this magic. This is just an empty, dull studio. And Barry designed this wonderful set and this wonderful composition at the end here with these three lords caught up in all this foliage, and Dante has to bring the whole thing to life.
And these lords, these sleeping lords, at one point were created by Howard Berger, and we ended up putting real, actual actors in.
Well, it was very difficult because, you know, it's a mixture. This is a real actor. This was a real moment, but some of the other stuff was things that Howard made, because we couldn't ask. This is bogus. No, that's one of the real ones. The next face you'll see will be bogus. This one, although we had a real actor, and you'll see later on in the film they come to life, but for some of these shots where you needed people to be so still, we thought it was just too much to get a real actor to do, especially as they had to sit in this position with all this stuff all over them.
Right.
And we couldn't keep bringing them in and out, in and out. So it ended up being a mixture of real actors, and, you know, he made them brilliantly. I mean, he made them look exactly, you can barely tell the difference.
With plastic diaphragms so that they could breathe, that he could manipulate off camera.
You know, I mean, not just this film, all these films, it's just so many different talents are brought to bear. I mean, there's so many elements to doing it. I think that's what kind of shocked me, you know, how much craft there is in, even in the simplest things. But
which really speaks to the whole concept of communication, because there's no way you can make a film like this, forget about shoot it, but actually put it together without everybody knowing what everybody else is doing. And there are a lot of people whose job it is to make sure. Sometimes you feel like there's too much information, too many emails, too many memos, but it really has to take place, because there's no one gesture you can make that doesn't affect wardrobe, props, the set decoration, the next day's work, and these really are. It's like running an army, I think.
Yeah, and as you say, being on the same page, sharing information, even if it drives you mad. I mean, the number of meetings we would have during our 6 months of pre-production. It would drive you crazy, but it's all important. This is all good. This is a wonderful effect on Lily Andel, Laurie Brent.
Who is an actress out of Sydney who I don't believe had ever been in a motion picture before. She had done some television.
Yeah, she'd done a little role in Pacific, and while she was doing this, she also had another job. She would make coffee at in an art house cinema. She'd be the coffee lady.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So,
I don't think I knew that.
No.
I know she's a singer also.
Yeah, she's
Laura Brent.
a beautiful girl, and we were lucky. And she, as you say, she hadn't done very much, and it's a kind of strange role. But she needed to be ethereal. She needed to be really beautiful. But it's quite a difficult scene to do this. I mean, there's some information, and you wanted someone. You didn't just want a girl who was, say, a fashion model who looked beautiful, who could move. You really wanted an actress who could handle this stuff. And I remember it was very hard casting this role. All these beautiful young women coming in.
Yeah, it's a very, very hard job.
Someone had to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really put them all through the acting chops, because this is an important scene.
Do you remember how tough it was to get her hair and the wardrobe, the dress right?
I know. One of our toughest moments. And then, so we had to get that right and everything. And then after that, we had to get this glow thing, which took a long time to get the right level of it. And of course, as with everything, everybody has opinions about it. But, I think it kind of works. She looks ethereal. She looks from somewhere else. And yet, there's a realism about her.
And this whole sequence, I think, just speaks to the talent of Dante Spinotti, who just was able to light it in a way that she is separate from everyone else, and yet she's very much part of the scene.
Yeah, and again, there's some wonderful plate shots and wonderful, work by the visual effects. And, we've just seen what is, in fact, our nemesis, which is Dark Island, which is, where the place we have to go to win the battle, battle of good over evil. And in London there were 5 visual effects houses. MPC and Frame Store did the majority of it, and then there was the Senate, Cinesight, and the Mill.
Worst nightmares. Our darkest wishes.
Did you always know what you wanted Dark Island to look like?
No, I don't think we did. I mean, Dark Island is in the book, but I think what we had to do was to inject the idea of the green mist, which has been the motif for the villainy, the threat in the film, and we had to integrate the elements of the green mist into it, so you knew that this is where evil was being housed. And I think it took quite a long time to get that, that level, so it was a sinister-looking place, frightening-looking place, and yet had the ingredients and, again, the sound that would make it threatening.
This is a lovely scene that's all done in one shot.
Yeah, with the help of a mirror.
Yes.
And now we come
and a good focus puller.
And a good focus. When we come to our favourite moment, this is the famous event when you and I had a bust up on the set, and I threw you off the set. Is this true?
Right. Yeah. No, yes, you did. You did. Luckily, it didn't last long, and we made up shortly. But I'm sure I had way too much to say about it when you had so many other things to pay attention to.
No, we had a lot of trouble with this scene because we wanted it to be intimate, yet we didn't want it to be silly. And I think I shot this scene 3 times, and in the end used bits from every version of it. And
I think that's true.
I think I drove the boys mad doing this, but it was quite a difficult scene with all the armour to go on and off, because it's sort of real armour.
That's right.
And to have this kind of delicate moment that you don't want to be too delicate, but nonetheless you want to have some emotion in it. I think it was a tricky thing, and we had a bad day then.
But you know what? We ended up with a very good scene.
Yes, and we survived it all.
Yeah.
People are around, and there's a lot of tension on any set, but I think you have to get over it and listen to what people have to say. I think because people, there's so much going on that you can't see everything as a director. And it's good to have input.
Yes, and at the same time, you also know when to keep quiet.
Yeah.
Not everything you say is going to be helpful.